Joining us now to talk politics about these election results is Blake Rutherford. He operates the popular politics, news, and opinion website, blakesthinktank.com. Blake, always good to be with you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Roby.
All right, we got Lincoln 44, Halter 42, D.C. Morrison 13% in this Democratic Senate primary. Tell me, who is a D.C. Morrison voter and what do they do now?
I'm not sure that we really know, Roby. The D.C. Morrison voter may be a hybrid of several things. They're very conservative, we know that. They're very frustrated with what's going on in Washington, and they don't like Bill Halter or Blanche Lincoln very much. So what they do now is yet to be seen. Will those voters stay home, or are they likely to migrate to one of the two candidates? I think it's unlikely that they would find a home with one of the two candidates, and the fact that Mr. Morrison himself said he had no intention of endorsing either Blanche Lincoln or Bill Halter is telling.
I think that D.C. Morrison may start the Democrats for John Bozeman fan club is what his next move may be.
It entirely could be. That's exactly right. I mean, the question all along was, what is D.C. Morrison doing in the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate? I wouldn't be surprised at all if we saw some support from him lean John Bozeman's way.
Let's talk about some Halter strategy and some Lincoln strategy. Let's start first with Bill Halter. You and I and Jason Tolbert, the third person in our Arkansas election line project, have designated this race as leans Halter at this time, a slight lean as it is. Tell me why you think Halter has an advantage right now and what he does over the next 2.5 weeks.
Well, he has an advantage right now, Roby, because he made up an enormous amount of ground in a very short period of time. Blanche Lincoln was polling anywhere from the low 50s to the high 40s, and she only got about 44% on Election Day. Her support plateaued right around that mid-40s number, and it never really seemed to move. But Halter, who started out in the low 30s, was able to make up a whole lot of ground. Momentum is with him. His voters appear energized and enthusiastic and willing to come back out and vote, which, as you know, Roby, is the most important thing in determining who's going to win a primary runoff, who can get their people back out to vote. What does he do now? He talks a lot about change. He talks a lot about change and how change will be of real value to Arkansans. His line of 55% of people voted against Blanche Lincoln is a good one. And his first TV ad since the runoff began, which he called Change, is also very, very good. I think that message is going to resonate. So at this point, Roby, it leans Halter, but only slightly. Blanche Lincoln did very well in some areas with other runoffs, and those voters are likely to come back out. So I know we'll talk a little bit more about that.
So Lincoln has to get more of her 44% out than Halter gets of his 42% out. Her message is more, I am the candidate of experience and I am in a position to benefit Arkansas. Was that the message that voters were looking for on election night? Does she stick with that through the runoff election?
I don't know, Roby. I mean, I think that the experience question works for some Arkansas voters, and Arkansas is a pretty unique place. She does have a record of accomplishment. She has delivered on some things and got a big vote just yesterday in favor of financial regulatory reform. But there is a sentiment out there that people are frustrated with what's going on in Washington. So I'm not sure how you counteract that frustration with a message of, I'm the experienced Washington candidate, send me back. I think the Lincoln campaign is going to have to rethink their strategy. I think they are, because we haven't heard much from them in the first few days since the runoff. And I think they've got to rethink what it means to set yourself up as a Washington insider. A majority of voters in the Democratic primary didn't like that message.
Well, let's switch to the other primary, the GOP primary. John Bozeman beats a field of 7 challengers by 53% margin, a very impressive victory for him. I think there was a lot of talk that he could get over that magic 50% threshold, but maybe just barely. 53% is pretty strong. Tell me how he did that. Tell me how strong of a message he may have sent that he is the guy to beat in the fall.
Well, he did it by appealing to that core Republican base. He had an advantage out of the gate of being the representative from the most Republican congressional district in Arkansas. He was well known among Republican primary voters. He was well known within the core Republican groups that were going to drive turnout on Election Day. It's a very strong performance, very impressive for a candidate of any magnitude to get out of a very crowded primary without a runoff. And good news for him, he'll have 3 weeks of sitting back while Senator Lincoln and Lieutenant Governor Bill Halter duke it out in their primary matchup, in their runoff matchup. But, you know, I think the thing to think about with that is look at the number of voters that participated in the Republican primary versus the Democratic primary. Republican turnout in the Senate primary was far less than in the Democratic Senate primary. John Bozeman, while well-known in Northwest Arkansas, isn't well-known outside of that area. What kind of a candidate is he going to be when he has to travel statewide? How is he going to combat Democratic strengths in Central Arkansas, where he did do well, and in South and Eastern Arkansas, where both Lieutenant Governor Bill Halter and Senator Blanche Lincoln did well in their primaries? So I think there's a bit of a rush to judgment in anointing John Bozeman as the winner of this election. He's popular, he's well-liked among Republicans, but Democrats still outnumber Republicans in Arkansas.
Yeah, and he definitely, because of that smaller Republican pool of voters, probably didn't get tagged with the insider baggage that Blanche Lincoln has. And I think, too, I mean, John Bozeman hasn't been at the center of some of these controversial votes like Blanche Lincoln has. Would you not agree that that's why she's more of a target for this anti-incumbent move? Because there were some Republicans, challengers, that were trying to tag him as a part of the Washington establishment, too.
Yeah, absolutely, Roby. That's a great point. I mean, he has, for whatever reason, been able to avoid all of the anti-Washington, anti-incumbent arguments that A, have been lobbed at Blanche Lincoln, and B, that have been lobbed at other national Republicans, and I think about Robert Bennett in Utah. John Bozeman has a record that either Democratic candidate will certainly exploit. I mean, this is someone who voted in favor of TARP when the issue first came about in 2007, a vote that Republicans across the country have criticized and voters across the country have criticized. There was little to no effectiveness of State Senator Gilbert Baker's efforts to attack him on that, when Blanche Lincoln or Bill Halter, depending on who the nominee is, gets a chance to really draw those distinctions about not only those votes, but other votes in support of the Bush record. John Bozeman's going to have to respond, and he's going to have to go on the record. Is he able to do that? Is he effectively able to do it? You know, he really just wasn't tested, is I guess the best way to say it, Roby, in the GOP primary. That's good for John Bozeman, but is it good for Republicans in the fall? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, and that vote he took on TARP, by the way, was 2008, not 2007. Slight correction for you there.
Yeah, there you go. It's a numbers game, not my strength, Roby.